Sorry you're there. My name is Benedict. You may know me from such videos as Effective Music Making the Intro. This is the first of the real content. I would still encourage you, if you're starting here, to go back and watch the intro, because that does describe how we're going to approach things and lay out some of the reasons for why we approach them this way. I will be covering some of that too here, but please don't skip ahead on things, because while it's very easy to think, well, this isn't relevant to me, that's probably where things start to go wrong, and you don't realize that that's where it's going wrong, and then you blame it on something else, like the sounds or whatever. I have already had some nice interest, which is great, and I am continuing to ask. It's a thing I've got to learn to do here, obviously. I'm learning to ask people to support me in doing this. In doing this, I'm giving a huge amount of value. I mean, this is 30 years of learning, which I often had to pay for, going to my theory teachers. So it's only fair that something comes back. If you're not going to hire me for something, fair enough, then please consider sharing this to somewhere else in a productive sort of a way. Don't just dump it and feel like you've achieved something. Actually add value and explain to people why this is probably a good thing for them to be getting down with. Or the thing that really talks here is money. And the coffee link will be up. It's also down there. If you're getting value from this, please return some to help make sure that this keeps going. Another way that really helps is that people have questions and they often come to me privately. If this is public work, kind of like pro bono, then your question is probably equally being asked, quietly perhaps, by many other people. So if you have the courage to ask it publicly, then the answer is useful for everybody. If you go private but don't want to pay, then I probably am going to push back. If you want to come to me for one-on-one lessons, brilliant. But if you've got questions about this and you don't want one-on-one engagement and the direct fees associated with that, then ask your question on the relevant video and I will provide an answer which is good for you and everybody else. That's how we make all of this have value. What we're going to look at here is the very beginnings of music theory or harmony theory. Now, before people get into like, we're going to cover that in a moment. This is the beginnings of everything. Remember, this series is about how to write effectively. So when you go into a session to write a piece of music, that you can be effective. And that once you've done this a little bit, you can guarantee that in effectively every situation, you will come out with a usable result. Therefore, you won't have those times of writer's block or writing, starting an 8-bar loop of boom chakalaka, and then going WTF and filing it as boom chakalaka number 379 and never actually finishing a piece. The whole idea is to be able to finish, publish, because that's how we actually get to do things that matter, because not only can people hear what we've done, but we gain far more by the finishing, publishing, doing again thing. The first things that I am going to ask you to do is to put aside some what we call preconceived ideas or conventions, things that are commonly talked about in groups and forums as this is how you do it. I'm going to say they do more damage than good. Yes, you can point to so-and-so's record where they done it that way, apparently. Either they didn't really do it that way, or the person had enough skills that they were using elements of that method, but not exclusively that method. So the number one thing that I will say, and there are a few things here, is put aside loops. While music can be made with loops, Mars's pump up the volume, there are loops all the way through that. You can hear them sort of cut and pasted together. It's cool. But trying to say, I'm going to get a leg up, or I'm going to solve what I don't know how to do by using loops, is a way of putting yourself into a dead end. because while you can glue together loops and go, I've got a result, you're not in control of that result. What if you wanted something in the middle of that loop to be changed? Now, before you go, oh, but Benedict, you just use a Rex loop. There's only so far that's going to take you before you still run into the same brick wall. Remember last time I said there's just no point. If you keep hitting a brick wall, there's no point moving that brick wall a little bit further along. You still hit a brick wall. The whole idea here is that we step outside of those and start learning to do the real work, and it's nowhere near as hard as you think. Remember, I started with far less information and understanding than I'll be giving you in even just this lesson here. So loops, let's get rid of them. The same goes for any kind of do-it-for-you apps. So they are things like easy drummer, easy this, easy that, or everybody's most favorite abomination, MIDI pack. Don't use any of those sorts of things that say we're going to handle the theory for you. We're going to lay out chords for you. We're going to this, that, and the other for you. They're a crutch. Would you teach your baby to learn to walk in a Zimmer frame? No, because you know that they're never going to learn to walk. There has to be a point at which baby stands up, walks, trips over something, goes, oh, geez, that sucks, stands up again. That's part of learning to be able to actually walk. Really important. Put those things aside. Otherwise, you won't go anywhere, and trying to mishmash with this in the short term at least will do you damage. Once you know how to do this properly, then you can say, oh, I'm going to use a loop on that bit, but you know how to integrate those. And that's how a lot of those great loop tracks are done, because the person actually knows how to integrate it with original work. Genre tropes. I have lots of people approach me saying, can you teach me how to write genre X? No one can. There are people who will have courses telling you how to do it, but you look at the people who come out of those courses and they can't actually make music that stands on its own 2 feet. They may be able to clone certain formula tropes, but their music doesn't work. Therefore, they've wasted their time and money and dug a deeper hole because they think that what they've got there should have pushed them ahead. No, it's actually taken them in completely the wrong direction. It's just not going to work for you. So let's put aside all tropes of genre. Doesn't matter whether we're talking jazz, classical, opera, deathiest of death metal, where we're worshipping Satan, or EDM or EBM or whatever. Let's put all of those aside, because all of them function around the same 12 tones that we're going to look at today. It's merely a case of how they are used, and that's your job, to work out how you are going to use them. The other one, which I mentioned before, is a fear of theory. Initially, and especially as we start today, it might seem a bit irrelevant. Why would I need that? Or these are rules. Don't rules belong to Nazis? No, that's going to cause you a lot of problems. People who know this stuff and feel the story that they're looking to tell do far better than people who don't know this stuff. There is a situation where people approach this and think that music is purely technical, as in, if I can follow enough rules and apply them properly, then I'll end up with amazeballs tunes. Now, that applies equally to people who go through 40 years of university on how to be the best Mozart ever. They have no inspiration and they focus on the rules. But it applies equally to a lot of people in what we'll refer to as Dorville, who focus so much on, but this is what I'm supposed to do. That is fear. Fear is the biggest thing we need to overcome in this, because fear is the thing that's going to stop you. Now, I've made several videos recently around fear. Please go watch them. If you keep struggling with fear, running into that brick wall where you feel like, oh, I want to, and then you're constantly stopping, or going and doing something else, or being afraid, or going, why can't I be as cool as insert band X? That is fear. Deal with this. Following what I'm going to show you and actually doing the homework is going to help you overcome that fear, because you've now got tools that you can use. A big tip here to help you with this, to help embed what's going to work as opposed to what doesn't work, is to listen to good quality music. Now, that does not mean that you have to put aside your Iron Maiden records and start listening to Dvorak. No. If you're down with Dvorak, listen to Dvorak. You're probably listening to Dvorak already, some old school, old ugly dude, classical composer, Tchaikovsky, all these people. I mean, they're great musicians, but it is complex. But if you are listening to, well, much from, let's just pick the year 95 on. Actually, no, 98. There's a lot of tremendously cool stuff in about 98. Aqua's Barbie Girl and Cher, Do You Believe? That's actually good music. But listen to good quality music. Generally with this, I recommend anything up to early 90s or older, because the fundamentals are really solid. So if you have a best of Eagles, listen to it. Learn to understand it. It's not about having to like it, but it's about understanding it. Anything from that older period tends to be incredibly good quality. And that just sinks into your brain. Your brain goes, oh, okay, I hear those patterns. And then as you start to find them yourself, you go, just like the time where I worked out how to play the cool melody hook from Rod Stewart, Do You Think I'm Sexy? Wow, cool, how good was that? And that came because it was in there. It was already in there, and I just needed to unlock the how to get it out. No, I'm not going to play it for you. I'm probably playing it wrong, but it amused me at the time, and it's one of those things you don't forget. So listen to quality music. It puts good things inside here, inside the sort of the brain muscle memory. It has all these patterns in there, and it makes it easier for, as you start to get close to them, for the brain to go click and put them together for you. Righto. Please, if you need to, go back and watch that bit over and over, because it will be incredibly easy to fall back into these things of going, I will loops, or I'll use this helper that's going to do that bit for me. But I need to follow this genre trope. If my song doesn't sound like, for me, the time I really hit this wall was Front 242's. I'm pretty sure it was Special Forces. Doom, 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 doom. And I was just like, but that's how I've got to write my music. And it was a brick wall, and I just about gave up music completely until something made me think, this is really wrong. This isn't punk. Punk is a F you, I'm going to do it myself. And I threw away that attempt to be Front 242 and said, I'm going to be Benedict. And not long after that, I had my first release, which is Tubeway, which you can find on Bandcamp. I don't care whether you like it or not. That was actually EBM in its infancy as Benedict was doing it. So we start by looking at the basic building blocks of music. They underlie, as I said, every single genre, style, subculture, whatever, in Western music. Yes, you can raise microtones and this, that, and the other, and I'm not going to get into them, nor am I going to argue with you about it, because it's a pointless argument. We work on a 12-tone system, which is... that's your main in key. Oop, I better turn this off if I'm going to be able to play all the 12 tones. That's your 12 tones. That is everything you actually have to learn. Generally, we don't play them all at once, because as you can tell, it's not very charming. We tend to work in what's called a key or a scale, which we will get into later. I will work you through C major because it's the only key that matters. Everything else, no. There's one to be found in other keys, but C is easy, and the reason it's commonly shown on the piano is because it's so easy to see. So we have got these tones that repeat. That's the same. They're the same. They just happen to be running at twice the speed or half the speed. Twice the speed, half the speed again. It's just this bit that we learn. Once we learn that one octave, it's all the same. This is super, super important because people look at a keyboard, especially if it's a big piano, and they go, hey, bugger, there's 88 keys. How am I ever going to learn all of those? No. You only need to understand 12, but even there you don't really need to understand all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8 keys are all you need to understand. These 8 notes. That's a scale. We're playing scales. That's a scale. The reason musicians are encouraged to practice scales is so that we get to know which notes are comfortable to use and which are not. That's all it is. Now, the next thing to understand is that there is a relationship between these 7/8 notes. So we've got our first, which is our root note. Seeing we're in C, then that is going to be C. If we were in D, it would be D. If we're in E, it'd be E. If we're in F, this is going to get boring. C, it's our root note, so that's 1. The next note in that scale, we'll go over scales and keys in a moment, is 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There isn't actually an 8. It's just called unison because they're the same note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, unison. 1, 3, 5, which we will come to later. It's all about these intervals. So one of the great advantages to listening to quality music is that you will hear these intervals being used. So we can quite naturally hear that that's a first to second to third interval. Given time, we start to go, okay, that's probably a 1, 3, 5, as in the interval from there. We just train ourselves through repetition to understand that that's a second, that's a third is an interval, that's a fourth, that's a fifth, a sixth, a seventh, and that's kind of gone nowhere but just gotten brighter, as opposed to which has gotten bigger and richer. That's it. There is a relationship between these notes, and it's always counted in terms of from the root note. The root note being the name of your chord when we get into chords. Just accept that they're there. So we play, and we play our scales. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. Take some time. You think, well, that's irrelevant. I don't need to do that. Take some time to really do that and to play over it. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, unison. That teaches you, your brain, your muscle memory, these intervals. Because when people are playing, especially if you're watching a classic rock guitarist, let's choose somebody who's got a great musical intelligence and is a good player. John Fogerty of Cadence. When he's playing, he's not looking at his, and he's not focusing on anything because he's played enough and has good musical intelligence, largely because he doesn't let fear get in the way of his music. Then he can just feel. And I play that and I go, yeah, I'm not so sure. That That feels more comfortable. The interval just didn't feel like a nice step from there to there. That feels like a nice step from there to there. So the more you get used to the relationships of these intervals, the easier it will be when you're composing to go, yeah, but that doesn't feel comfortable. It felt uncomfortable. It's not wrong, but it's just not comfortable. So if we want that note to be expressed, we probably don't want to go straight to it. We just want to work our way around or towards it. This is the big thing. So spend time actually with your keyboard or guitar, if you are such a thing, playing a scale. It doesn't matter. Pick whatever basic scale is easy for you. Obviously on a keyboard, C major is easy because it's just the white keys. Black keys matter and you can use them later, but the white keys are easy. So let's now look at the relationships with these intervals. Obviously our root, that's where it all starts. That's the center of everything. And when we play, the first note that people hear tends to be the one that they say everything's going to be relative to this. If you listen to a bagpipe, bagpipes commonly will be in G in my understanding. I don't know everything about them. Can you hear what's happening there with my playing, bar the bum notes? I've got my central, my pedal point or my ground bass, my center note that's staying there. And I keep coming back to that center, that unison. So this is how the relationships work. So the first note tends to be everything moving around that spindle. We can do the same thing with C. And this is how medieval music worked. It tended not to have any movement in the center, hence a ground bass, as in you said, okay, my piece is here, and everything was moving around that maypole, which was the root note. Understanding that helps you to make sense of the relationships. So first, or root, we then got seconds. They're a little interesting. Even more interesting is a minor second. That's not comfortable. That's where we're playing the C and the C sharp, the black key next to it. That's very complex. It's how we do shower scene from Psycho, because it's like uncomfortable, but generally not used, but that's a minor second. But we'll stick with the major ones as such. It's a bit uncomfortable. Doesn't mean it doesn't have use. It's going to have big use momentarily. Then the third. Oh, hello, that's pretty comfortable. That's a bit grand. A fourth. A fourth is referred to as a perfect, as is a fifth. If you want to get too much into why these things are called this, it's not necessary, but look back onto how just intonation came about. Simply because they meddled with tuning to make sure that it worked across the harpsichord piano keyboard for every key, for everything. Before that, music was very limited and tended to be very regional. And it wasn't really possible to publish a manuscript of the Moonlight Sonata and have people in even the neighbouring county play it successfully because they would have a different sort of form of tuning and get there and go, this sounds bloody awful, because the harmonies weren't the same. So by creating just intonation where everything was tuned the same, then we kind of bent the rules a little bit, but not in a way to do any damage. So we got 2 points at which we call them perfect division of the fundamental of the way the sound is propagating. Don't need to fuss on that unless you really want to get into it. 4th, 5th, 6th. Interesting, kind of tension, kind of a... Then a 7th. Hello, there's something very powerful about the 7th. There's something powerful about the 2nd, but it's not... The 7th, what does this do? What do we want to do as soon as we hit that 7th? Hopefully you're saying, that one please, sir. It's our leading tone. So it's always going to lead to unison. It will always want to resolve to home. Home being the root. Those relationships, really spend some time getting used to them. Obviously, unison is super easy. 3rd and 5th are, as is 4th. Get used to them. So again, when you play scales, we can move in intervals. And the way that we move in intervals can be comfortable or uncomfortable, which, remember where I was playing this, wasn't that comfortable. But we can make it comfortable by giving ourselves reasons to go there. We've still done that, but we've put that in the middle to ease it, or we'll put that in the middle to ease it. So the more you understand just how those work together, the better. Now, don't expect to be able to understand that on some kind of textbook level. It is not meant that way. It's just a feeling level. And again, the more you listen to good quality music that actually has music, and not just going stutter, 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 wagga, 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 stutter, stutter, because there's no music in there. Or there's so little that there's not much point. I'm amazed, that I go places and young people are listening to this kind of top 40-ish or whatever off Spotify, and it just doesn't work. And then when something older comes on that they do know, whether it's a Hard Take on Me or an ABBA song or something like that, their bodies actually start to move far more complexly than they do when they listen to the wagga wagga stutter stutter music, which tells you that the richness of the music, and ABBA was not exactly the richest, but great, engages the person far more than, so take advantage of that. So the more you listen to high quality music, the more you're going to hear these things in action. If something sounds a little jazzy, chances are they're using that 7th or a 9th. One of the things that we can be aware of is that the relationship that's uncomfortable here can work outside of the octave. Inside the octave, with that 2nd, not super comfortable. If we move that up an octave, it's still tight, but it's interesting. So if you absolutely have to do that, move it an octave. Chances are it's going to be fine. That works better if you're going up than it does if you're going down. See, that's not as comfortable as this. This is something you will just start to understand as you go through. Now, remember with the seventh, what magical thing did the seventh do? It leads us to the root. We can use this to our advantage. There's a big thing called cadence. Most of you will know it through cadence count. Sound off, 1, 2. That thing. Have a listen to it. That's a cadence. And so it's a perfect cadence. Now, that works through the tension that we get of the leading and the tension that we get of the fourth, because it's not as comfortable as a third or as comfortable as a fifth. So here how this resolves. So we've got that tension here, and that resolves. That's a perfect cadence. Because it's the chord at that point, and we'll get into chords in the next episode, we'll get into chords. Because if our major chord here, and this is on our root, C, E, G, then our leading note is here, which is the B. If we turn it into a chord, we've got a D. Now D also, there's that second, it has a desire to resolve. The simplest, easiest way to resolve it is to go back to root. We can go to there, but that's not as resolved as here. Something that's that tense, it resolves better going to root. So we've got this which wants to resolve, this which wants to resolve, and this which wants to resolve to one of those more comfortable things. So we've got this, which will resolve to our major chord. Now that doesn't mean that you have to use it so bluntly. There are lots of other ways to do cadences. Go read up on them. They are complex. But just understanding the very basics of our seventh wants to go to unison, our second wants to go to root, our fourth wants to go to third or fifth. Means that we can use these, and these were used to be called the devil's triad or devil's tone, and they were considered illegal in music because it creates this kind of tension that's just it's a little too exciting. So understand how those go, because when you're coming to the end of a phrase, or particularly the end of a section, and very much the end of a song, you have to finish things. We'll talk about that more as we get into melody, but the easiest way to finish things is to be using your and you don't have to use heavy chordage to do it. We could be playing along. See, it's gone back to resolution. Gone to resolution. Gone to resolution. Fourth to root. I mean, anything to root will say resolution. But that gives people a sense of this is finished. This bit's finished. Obviously, isn't as strong a resolution as that. So that's more of a, yep, we're all done, we can all go home. Thank you, come again. But understand these things. Don't fight them. And don't say, well, I'm not going to use them because they're too sucky and cheesy and what have you, because then you're getting stuck in genre tropes. There are plenty of ways to use those or elements of those that tell your listener what's happening at this point in time, choosing to avoid using them, choosing to refuse to use them, or choosing to be in C, let's say C. That's not a comfortable ending. There are times where that might be of some kind of value. But you've got to really be aware of what you're doing, and it's got to fit the story of what you're doing. If this was ABBA's Dancing Queen, we wouldn't feel like it resolved very nicely. That's the kind of thing that they would use in a film where something was sort of finished, a scene was finished, but you knew there was going to be a problem with this. You know, the guy just kissed his girl, but we know that he's a mass murderer and it's not going to work out well for her. It's like, we've hung somewhere. You can do whatever you like, but just be aware of there are these relationships here, and you use them. And the way you use them defines your story. And saying, oh, well, I'll just use them differently from absolutely everybody else could make you the most amazing person ever. You may have invented something new. But seeing there are a convention, like when you walk up to somebody and you first meet them and you say, hello, my name is Benedict. What's your name? Are you having a nice day? That's a convention that says, I'm here to be your friend, not to stab you. If you walk up to somebody, punch them in the face, shoot them in the foot, and then say, hey, how's your day? And act like they should be your friend, you have broken quite a few conventions, and chances are they're not going to be your friend, and you are going to spend a night in a little rubber room. So use conventions. If you meddle with conventions, as in like then you are starting to say something truly powerful, because people will feel it. All right, now, all of this works within key and scale, which I've been talking to. You can't talk about any of this without getting into it. I know that's going to frighten people and go, why should I have to? You can do whatever you like. Remember, we've got 12 tones. It's how you choose to use these and arrange these that are entirely up to you. I have written whole pieces with 3 notes. The whole piece has nothing but 3 notes in it. If it's not on one of those notes, it's not in the piece. That was my key and scale. I think there's one that's that. And I didn't just do this through the whole piece. It's got 3 notes. That's my whole key and scale. If you want to look for them, they are on my YouTube, somewhere right towards the bottom. You can pick them because I think they're called CDG and CEG. They're just called that, but they are fully functional pieces of music. So you can do whatever you want. If you want to make a scale that's... You can. That could be... I can define that as my key and scale and write a piece of music in it. It might be exotic, but that's why I would do it. It's not unusual for me to every now and then just make up a key and scale and go, that's it. Just understand you need your root and unison to be wherever you put them. Okay, there we go. There's my key and scale. That's on an F sharp, so it's an F sharp something or other. Some person who's read far too many books for anybody's good would probably be able to tell me that there's some kind of name for that, but it's just my scale that I made up for this piece. Never be afraid of that. So long as you define what you're doing and you stay consistent, people will listen to it and they might go, it's a bit exotic, it's a bit Eastern or Asian or something or other. But they'll accept it because it works. You've just got to be consistent. If you understand the relationships here, you can do whatever you want and make any key or scale you like. In terms of defining a scale, obviously they're just repeating patterns, as is our 12 tones, just repeating patterns. We get to 7 and then we start again on unison. 8 is just the root, starting an octave higher or an octave lower. With our scales, we're just repeating patterns. 7th octave, which is starting again. I'm not very good at playing. Do you see? They were just the same thing in 2 octaves, exactly the same. They don't change. So let's define the key and scale that we've been working in. The key is C, and it's C major. We've done that already. The way that we can work out what this is that we go, here's my root note. I could pick anything. Here's my root note. I go tone. That's a semitone, which we're not going to play. Let's just turn this back off again. That black key in the middle, C sharp, doesn't belong there. So semitone, tone, semitone, we skip tone, and then a semitone. Then we skip a tone, which sends us to G, semitone, tone, tone, semitone. Let's put this into chromatic. I forgot the chromatic was here. This will help. So tone, tone, semitone. We skip a tone. And then we go tone, tone, semitone. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So tone, 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 semitone, tone, 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 semitone. It takes a little bit to get used to, but root, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. If we want to play in D major, then we go root, tone, tone, semitone. Ooh, we got one of them black keys in now. Tone, 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 semitone. And I used this. The first time I used a key that wasn't C, it was Technocrat. That's just using D major and using the interesting notes in that scale. And that's that whole piece. There's a bit more in between, but that's it. So you can move that anywhere on the keyboard. If I were better as a player, then I would know them. If you are going to be a player, then you do kind of need to practice your scales. So I might say, okay, I'm going to do A, tone, tone, semitone, and then tone, 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 semitone. It's not that hard to work out, but I'm not going to go too far down that path because I assume you'll hear more to write songs than you are to be a player. It helps to at least understand that. So you can define any normal major by simply picking your root note, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That's it. Now I've got all the keys that are going to work. This is where things like this can be handy. We can say, okay, well, I'm going to define those things. DAWs increasingly are coming with some sort of system to hold you to a key or scale. I'm not entirely opposed to using those. I will show you a trick that I do use with reasons things, which is perhaps a little more convoluted than some other systems. But if I wanted to play in D, let's say, I can use this guy to transpose me up 2 semitones, C to D. See, I press C, it plays D, and then I can define my key here, D major. So now I can play where I'm comfortable. This isn't perfect. It's not a good plan if you want to be a player, but if you're like me, there is nothing wrong entirely with doing this. It's not the first thing that I would encourage somebody to do, but it's far from the last thing. It's not too uncommon for that sort of thing to be done. That's a major which you can do anywhere. The other common one is a minor. Ooh, now that looks complex. A minor is defined in a similar pattern but different. So our minor scale, again, if we're going with C, it starts, we move a tone, a semitone, tone. We skip a tone, tone, semitone, tone. Tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, tone. So rather than the tone, tone, semitone, it's tone, semitone, tone. You just got to practice this to get used to it. Again, it's more of a big deal if you're a player, but you do need to understand this if you are going to write, because if you write outside of a key or scale, like let's say, for example, I am supposed to be in C. Let's say we start my composition here. That says, oh, it's in C. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. While there is nothing wrong with those things, they do need to be consistent. So if you are playing your piece and you're going, you need to decide, okay, is this actually going to be a scale? In which case you go in and you say, okay, these notes are not allowed, but that one is. Let's get rid of, say, this one. And we've now got some sort of pentatonic, slightly exotic, Arabic-y scale. The consistency is what matters. If you're just going to randomly put in a key that doesn't belong there, a note that doesn't fit with our scale, then people are just going to be confused and they're going to go, you suck. So make it consistent whatever you do. So don't see keys and scales as being an enemy. They're not boring. If you're playing them boring, if you're just going, then you're not doing it right. You've got to get to the point where you can play them phrased and having them start to flow. It makes a massive difference because that means it's sort of inside. And then you will find, as you hear me do here, that you suddenly start to become melodic with it. And that's what you need. It doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to play these things, and God forbid I put it in with a mass far more often than not. Maybe a record might have one, maybe two instances of me having actually played something, but it's not uncommon that they have none. So you don't need to. It's just a case of having that feeling of how we can manage and use intervals and their relationships with each other. That's really about it. This is seemingly an irrelevant thing, but these are the fundamentals. It's a little like Lego. If you decided you were going to play Lego, make a Lego something or other, and you didn't get your Lego pieces out, then you wouldn't be able to make anything. You would just sit there looking like a fool, and when your wife came in and said, "Oh, honey, what did you make with the Lego?" you said, "Well, nothing." She would probably say, "Well, hubby, you're obviously a moron because you didn't open the cupboard and get the Lego out," before she divorces you for being incredibly stupid. Learn the very basic building blocks of what you do, And the basic building blocks of music are obviously the notes in your octave of your chosen defined scale. Obviously, there are plenty of them that have been predefined. You know, these are different sorts of scale. Phrygian. Okay, cool. So some of them have been predefined, and there are lots more than these that are predefined. I actually never bother with them. Because, as I say, where I want to use an exotic scale, I just say, okay, that's what mine's going to be. I just go, okay, yeah, no, we're not going to have him. No, we're not going to have him. We're going to have him. Yeah, look, those two, we'll get rid of that one and that one. Okay. What have I got? Okay. Cool. That would work if I know what I'm doing and say, okay, I'm just going to work with those notes. There we go. I've got a C something or other. If I wanted to move that to something else, then yes, I could use a transpose and redefine it here as an F something or other. Who cares? This gives you a huge amount of freedom by being able to have a useful definition. Like, most of us are far more comfortable to sleep in a bedroom or in a room that has walls and a door than we are to sleep outside on the street. So this is a way of giving ourselves that comfort of saying, I know where I am, I can feel comfortable, I can take my trousers off now and relax and belch and drink beer and watch the Kardashians, because we're comfortable in what we're doing. So please take your time to really get comfy with playing your octave in a scale, a key and scale that works for you. And you can be any of them, but it's just easiest to do it on a keyboard in C major, because that works out really nicely. Then really come to be comfortable with this. This is homework. I should have said that before. Homework is to do this. If you don't have a keyboard, I've got to really say you're not prepared. Maybe there's a way to do it on your keys, computer, yes. But you just don't get the same result. But do whatever you got to do, but really spend some time so that you can then start to melodyize off of that. So you can start a session by going... very light with my fingering, sometimes far too much so. And then start to play around with that so that you get to the point where you're really comfortable. And then, of course, you can start to introduce your other hand. And understand the relationships. If I start on a... Hear how that was a little interesting? Just understand those relationships. The more you play with that, the more it'll just settle in. And as you're listening to good quality music, the more your brain and body start to go, ooh, I get those patterns. Because all it is getting used to the patterns, filling your brain with a spreadsheet of these patterns and how they work. If you have questions about this, again, please don't send them to me personally. This is a for everybody. So if you're asking the question, other people will be needing the answer for this as well. Ask the question down there, preferably after hitting my coffee thing, because remember, I'm giving a lot of value here. And ask the question. I'll come along and answer it. If somebody has already asked the question, please don't blindly ask it again, because, well, it says that you're really not here to learn. It says that you're here just to take. Look at any existing questions and answers first, please. Otherwise, you might find yourself on the wrong end, especially if you get narky. Because I'm no interest in people being narky. We are here to learn and to gain, and if we can do that in a positive, interactive sort of a way, then that is the way. If not, it is not the way. And I don't take kindly to that sort of stuff. So get out there, have fun. If you don't dig pianos, and I sort of don't, but I use them because they're incredibly clear and you can play anything on a piano and it sounds good, then use your favourite synth sound. But preferably not a 106 bass sound, because it's far too limited to play melodically. You need to learn to be able to play melodically, because if you can't understand melody and make melody, then you are going to hit that brick wall. You'll have just moved it a little bit by saying, oh, but now I know theory. It's like, no, you don't know theory if you can't play it melodically. I'm a pretty rotten player. I can't play with anybody. But I know enough of this, and by feel, look, that was a really nice, comfortable little sort of thing. What have I got? So I've got a sub. Interesting, but because it was in different octaves, it sounded really rather nice. I impressed myself. Go off, play, do this. This is your homework. I anticipate probably roughly once a week for these, so you have about a week to do your homework. Believe me, every teacher knows if you haven't done your homework. If you ask questions that are clearly a result of not having done your homework, then the answer has to be go rewatch and do your homework. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up to fail, and none of us want that. Go practice.